how does our culture imagine the environment to look? What do we think of when we think of the gender of the environment, or the sexuality of the environment, or the race of the environment? Go for it.
I feel like it's very gendered as like feminine, and as like this image of like Mother Earth, and like very much connected to indigeneity and yeah, like fertile and wise and ancient and, you know, like untouched by man.
For sure.
Yeah, so I think of Avatar when I'm thinking about like the environment. I feel like what we like there's this dichotomy between like American government and then the environment.
Yeah.
And you know, to say that it's a female gender identification, I think fits, because Awa, which is the tree in that film, is supposedly a feminine entity.
And what does that mean about humans?
We're masculine.
Right.
Conquering, like it's an image of domination and pitting human beings against nature. Yeah, penetration, talking about like sexualizing nature and making it feminine.
For sure. You're good.
I was going to say, we also managed to apply, the virgin whore dichotomy to the environment, in that, you know, like we see untouched land as like virginal, and then other as like totally fucked up and beyond repair. And in that sense, we sort of see ourselves as very apart from nature, and like places where we're sort of part of where we've made our impact, we see as like, you know, beyond repair.
Yeah, no kidding. So I want to talk a little bit about where that conception comes from. Did you have something to say?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Right. Just want to talk about, or like sort of relate that, and talking about like places that have been touched, like needs to be repaired.
Okay.
But and then also in terms of like racial terms, very much like notable savage, also connected to Avatar.
For sure.
I also think the responder would be like repair being directly something like removing humans from, like, you know, like separating. To repair means recreating that like wilderness.
I'm going to show you all a really funny little comic real quick. It's not a comic, it's like a comic strip. What's that?
Can you read it out loud?
Yeah, absolutely. So here we have John Muir, who along with one other person, or two other people maybe, Theodore Roosevelt and this man named Freeman Tilden. They came up with and invented the national parks. And so this is John Muir's hopes and dreams. And there's Teddy Roosevelt saying, "I love this park idea, Muir. Nature is great. Nature makes me excited and I want to hump it." And so then you have John Muir saying, yes, nature, yes, sure, and we should respect nature. And then Teddy Roosevelt shoots his guns, going bang, bang, bang. And so I'm sorry that this is kind of silly. I just felt like it had a lot of relation to what I'm talking about. But so there's definitely this idea that that nature is female and feminine, and men and humans are you know, homogenous like men. You know, what's that to say of like a female bodied, you know, human beings? Like, where do they play into this, you know, at all? And so I want to talk about the history of that. How there are particular figures in United States history who conceptualize the continent, the North American continent, and nature in general as this woman, and so that's John Muir and Freeman Tilden, Freeman Tilden has this excellent quote where he says that nature greeted with open and glowing eyes the first white men who came to greet her, and he's talking about colonial expansion into the rest North American continent, which is to say nothing of any of the indigenous people who were living all over the continent. There's a lot of study into what's called medieval love poetry, which has to do with courtly love and the way that relationships between men and women are supposed to occur, which is to say that that the most romantic love is defined by desire and longing without any actual like sexual engagement, and there's this protection of the female, and protection from mythical or real villains, and so that's one of the ways that nature is conceptualized, either as a female to be protected, a white female to be protected, or a dark woman of color, or just a dark person of color, where white masculinity conquers and therefore reinstates or restates its own self, its heterosexual identity through the conquering of it. But at the same time, there needs to be protection from civilization, from like the dark civilization, all the worst aspects of urban life that need to be kept from nature, and all of the people of color who live in nature need to be taken out of it so that nature can be clean and pure. This has like a very serious history and like this like medieval love poetry that all of these classics studying presidents, you hear about like Theodore Roosevelt, who could read and write Latin and Greek, and he was also ambidextrous and could write both with two hands at the same time. They studied this, and this is the way that they conceptualized sexual relationships, and they applied it to the way that they treated nature. And so, what does that mean about urban environments? Can there be such thing as an urban environment? If there's no green, if it's all just gray, and what does that mean about people in these urban environments? Do they have a right to nature? Do they have a right to environmental justice and equitable access to safe and healthy environmental spaces? And do they have, like, is there such thing as an environment which an urban community can claim to be its own? And what's to be said of queer people who are not even, not at any point part of this like romance between white men and nature, and in fact, nature is this queer other that constantly resists being conquered, and in its being queer, therein lies its the right for masculine heteropatriarchal civilization to subsume it.